Thank you. According to Jane Belknap, last year's, some of the dust actually had a high degree of nutrients in it. And I am wondering if some of the dust brings something that might not be good for our river system when it arrives here.
Jane said that in Grand Junction at the water seminar that was focused on dust in a panel discussion. I think Jane was really referring there to eastern slope dust events, where it's pretty clearly established that between dust and particulates coming out of the eastern plains on upslope, in upslope air mass movement, and chemically isolated dust as fine aerosols that are chemically isolated nutrients contained in aerosols, that those are having a large effect on water quality and plant community behavior on the Front Range. We have not found any evidence, and Corey Lawrence, who did the PhD on the chemistry of the dust, using water and soil and snow samples, did not find large amounts of nutrients. What he did find was large amounts of calcium, which are, of course, are really beneficial to counteract any effects of acidification from aerosols on alpine water. So that contradicts your thought that the dust may be harmful. It actually may be quite helpful in some systems, just depending on the source area. Colorado Plateau is not, intensively farmed landscape and doesn't have that spare nitrogen and other stuff to mess around with local chemistry in the mountains.
And my second question is, our friend from the Vail Daily had several questions about extending the principle. Once the snow all gone occurs 50 days early, how does that affect the water supply, or how does the water rushing through en masse early and passing us by essentially affect our valley and our economy? Unless, do you want to Okay.
Well, that's a better question for your local water manager to answer, and your local irrigation, your ditch companies, your providers. It's not, I couldn't speak to effects in the Vail Valley. I do know that this early snowmelt is really problematic for irrigators. Particularly the higher up in the system they are, in the higher valleys. And last year was really difficult in the Rio Grande watershed in the San Luis Valley as a result of that huge advance. And the effects on actual water yield that may occur because of dust are something we've focused on at the specific request of these water managers. They of course, are first interested in how much water you're going to get, and secondly, in when. And we could not answer the first question, is there an effect on yield? Until this year, when Painter and another new team member of our CODOS program, Jeff Deems, did take a look at a really large spatial scale at the whole upper Colorado River Basin from Lee's Ferry up over the period of record at Lee's Ferry, and using a lot of other data sources, made an evaluation of what that effect could have been because of dust on total yield over that period of record. And I can't actually talk about it yet because it's in press almost at the proceeding of National Academy of Sciences, but it should be out this summer. there is an effect, and it's not trivial.
There's been a tremendous change in the type of grazing done over the last 50 years, which may explain the improvement in your dust, because it used to be that in all these areas, sheep were one of the major grazing animals, and that's been reduced tremendously down to cattle, which are much less dense. If you get 4,000 head of sheep, you've got a lot more damage to the environment temporarily.
Well, I don't know if Jane has ever made a distinction there, but it'd be interesting to ask Jane Belknap if she sees a distinction in the particular species of grazer, you know, that.
One exception to that is the Navajo Reservation, where they are immune to the Taylor Grazing Act, and sheep is still grazed in high densities.
Yeah, and they are experiencing really severe alteration in the behavior of dunes in the Navajo Reservation. Dunes are all of a sudden becoming much more mobile over the reservation, and it's a real problem. It's affecting highways, et cetera.
I wanted to know if you had noticed any effect on the sublimation of snow due to dust on snow.
Well, that goes to the question of yield, effects on yield. And we have not been able to make measurements of that effect. That's just almost impossible to do in the field. And so it becomes something of a modeling discussion. And we just can't speak to a specific, we cannot quantify that effect per se on a physical basis. But it may be that sublimation isn't affected, but evaporation is. Because the dust is producing free water because of those high rates of energy at the surface, that may be more likely than an effect on sublimation, where you're skipping the liquid phase, going from solid to vapor. More likely that if there is a dust effect, that the physical process is, the physical effect is occurring during periods when there is free water at the surface.